Welcome to the Career Change Podcast, where you'll discover the frank and practical advice and resources that are already proven to work in the real world when it comes to changing careers or figuring out what business is right for you when you are a smart but likely also stuck, overwhelmed, or overthinking person in your mid-30s, your 40s, your mid-50s. I'm your host, Rikke, Hansen, a career change advisor, entrepreneur, and former corporate HR professional with over 15 years experience of helping thousands of people just like you identify or create careers or businesses that are both meaningful and future-proof. Welcome home. Hey, it's Rikke here. Welcome to episode 57 of the Career Change Podcast. Who do you most want to work with? Let's talk about who you most want to work with in your new career or in that business or portfolio career that you want to start. Or, in other words, who is your who? And for context, when I'm talking about your who in this episode, I'm talking about identifying those people you most want to be spending small or big chunks of your day-to-day work life with in your new career or in your new business. So in this episode, I'm specifically talking about the importance of identifying your ideal clients. And that's whether they are, internal clients that you in some capacity do work for, or whether they're external clients. And you might also call them customers or patients or clients. It really depends on the nature of the work that you'll be doing. Now, if you have clients in your current job, in your current career, in any capacity, then I'm sure that you've already noticed this. Those individuals or those groups of people, they really have the potential to make your work life either hell or heaven, right? Hell is other people, like Jean-Paul Sartre said in one of his plays. So people can really make or break your working day. Have you noticed? You might even be noticing it right now, right? And here's the important thing. There is really no point in you going from people or client hell in your current job or current career to people or client hell in your next career or in your own business, which could very well end up happening if you don't get clear on what type of client is ideal for you as part of the career change process, especially if you want to start your own business where it's going to be a lot about clients and getting that right. So in this episode, I really want to show you how to and encourage you to exercise some real power of choice as part of your career change process, because you have way more input and way more power over all of the aspects of your career change process than you likely think right now. Optionality, giving yourself options is key. Now, one of the reasons why I'm recording this episode is because, strangely enough, what I've noticed when I come across a lot of aspiring career changers is that for them, figuring out or identifying and deciding on their ideal client, on their who, seems to be really underutilized and underrated or even ignored or unaware of part of the career change process for them. For most people, and this might be the case for you, my dear listener, the only people that most people tend to focus on in their career change process is their current boss. And it's about getting as fast as possible from that horrible boss as you can. Now, that's not the who we're talking about in this episode. You probably don't need help with that. I also just want to address something up front, because I know that some of you might be thinking, yeah, right, Rikke, as if I have any kind of choice as deciding what kind of clients that I want. Now, just a brief thing on that one. I know that it might be hard and unfamiliar for you to get your head around identifying your ideal client. If you've always been working for someone else, if you've been an employee your entire working life, you are so used to not having options, to not having power. You're so used to you're just used to having to put up with whatever idiot clients or deadwood or bullies come your way as part of the job, right? It's not like anybody asks you at the interview stage, like, so what kind of clients would you like, madam? Nobody really asks you that, right? But here's the important bit. That does not mean that things cannot be different in the future. And it does not mean that you cannot choose to exercise your power of choice in the matter in the future. And you know what? the career change process is the perfect time to take back your power and decide what works best for you. But it's really important for you to be aware that you might sabotage yourself if you keep thinking like an employee and keep thinking like you don't have a choice. So why bother? You do have a choice. And fully engaging with the career change process is and even going through a career change process is the perfect opportunity for you to choose to be creative and take back the power, because you really need to think outside of the box that you are in right now, and you need to think much bigger and broader about what's possible for you, because only then can you identify your best career and your best business options. Okay, so how you go about the career change process is really key. And getting clear on who you most want to work with is something you can absolutely choose to do and that you should do. Now, of course, that does not mean that you will have 100% control over what ends up happening client-wise in your new career or in your new business, especially if you decide to still be an employee. But here's the thing, none of us can control everything. But what we can do is we can choose to influence everything. And that's what I really want you to think about. This is really, really key. Getting clear on your who, your ideal client as part of the career change process, it can really be such a helpful way to help you also identify career or business option that you might not have thought of. But it can also give you clarity as to what ideas to drop and which ones to keep. So it's a really great way of getting you out of the tunnel vision that having been an employee can really give you. All right? So it's important that you give yourself permission to really allow yourself to think outside of that box and to think about, what do I really want? So in this episode, I want to show you how figuring out your who, your ideal client, can often be a really practical tool for giving you clarity and focus, even early on in the career change process. And it's something that I always include in my work with my own clients, that who tool, because it is such a powerful tool. Here's how this particular episode can help you. You'll discover that figuring out who you would most want to work with can sometimes almost be the missing piece of the aha moment clincher tool, so to say, if you are the overthinker type who is stuck and not sure what you want to do or how much of a change you need. But it can also, you'll discover, be great for getting focus and help you narrow it down and get clarity if you're the overwhelmer type. So the opposite, almost, the person who's overwhelmed by too many ideas or too many passions or too many interests. So in case you belong to any of those two categories, which you probably do if you're a listener of the Career Change podcast, then this is going to be a great episode for you. And the way I'll share with you how this can be really helpful is I'll share 2 real client stories to help illustrate just how powerful figuring out you who can be. So first of all, you'll meet Lucy, who's the classic overthinker type, who's struggling to figure out what kind of career change she needs. And also she's the classic type, and you might be able to relate to this, who keeps talking herself out of any of the ideas that she comes up with. None of them really seem right or perfect. And for her, it was really key getting help nailing down her who, because it gave her the aha moment as to why she didn't actually need as much of a change as she thought. And it also made her realize that figuring out her ideal who was key to getting her own business right, rather than replicate the same problems that she had in her former career. And you'll also meet Jonathan, who is the classic overwhelmer type, total popcorn brain with total idea overwhelm. And you learn how nailing down his who really helped him identify and choose his best ideas, and then combining them into a unique business offering that he could start offering alongside still having money coming in from using his legal skill set as part of a portfolio career. So whether you're an overthinker or an overwhelmer or both, there are combos too, this is the podcast for you. Now remember, this is just one episode, right? To give you awareness of the who. If you want to go deeper or learn more about anything that I'm talking about in this podcast or anything else, then remember, just ask. This podcast is based on the most frequently asked questions from my newsletter subscribers over at thecareerchangepodcast.com. So make sure, if you have any suggestions, make sure you sign up to the newsletter over at thecareerchangepodcast.com and let me know where you want me to go deeper or anything else you want me to talk about. But I also just will say up front, when it comes to the importance of your who, that kind of varies from person to person. That's quite individual. For some people, it's very important to get the who right because they're really sensitive to other people and to these interactions. And for others, they can pretty much work with anybody. They're not very sensitive to other people. They can work with anyone. So just, tune into yourself. What type are you? How much of your current pain actually comes from other people? That's going to give you a real, idea as to just how important it is for you to get this right. But I'm sure that you'll agree that the joy and pain potential when it comes to the people part of our careers can really be hugely influential in how we feel on a day-to-day basis, right? So first, let me introduce you to Lucy, a client who it turned out was very, very sensitive to the who, and for whom figuring out her who was a key tool, both for figuring out why she needed a change and how much of a change she needed, but also at the same time, the who was the answer to what would guide her transition and help her figure out her new who, her ideal client for her own business. And also I want to say, even if you don't feel like you're the business type, because you might not feel terribly confident or this and that, listen in, because neither did she when she originally started working with me. All right, so listen in. So meet Lucy, the overthinker. So like I said, she was an overthinker type, and she found it really hard to come up with ideas for her career change. And she also kept talking herself out of any ideas she came up with. She found them unrealistic. They didn't quite feel right. She was also worried about risk and failure. And she'd been stuck for years trying to DIY her career change, but gotten no further. Then she came across my work and she decided to work with me, get professional advice to speed up the process and stop wasting the next 10 years continuing trying to figure this out by herself and going around in circles. Good on you, Lucy, for doing that. And by going through my program, by working with me, she literally went from not knowing to getting the idea for her own business in less than 3 months. She went from being an employee to starting her own consultancy in the same industry, within the same profession. And a lot of this insight was due to getting clear on the importance of her who. What I will say, if you're someone who's been trying to DIY or figure this out by yourself and you just keep going around in circles, you might want to reach out to. But in her own words, before working with me, Lucy knew she was in the wrong job. But what she didn't know was what to do next or how to search for a more ideal fit. Now, one of the first things that I do inside of your career change map, one of the first things I do when I work with clients is we really focus on, why do you need a career change? Do you even need one? And how much of a change do you need? Most people, they miss this vital first step, and that's why they keep second guessing. That's why they keep overwhelming and overthinking. And for Lucy particularly, it was really important that we needed to figure out, is it your entire profession that's the issue? I.e., do you need a massive career change? Or are the issues that you have actually mainly to do with your current job that you're really unhappy in? And maybe you just need a change within your career. And it became really clear to me very quickly working with Lucy. I've got almost 2 decades of experience. I can spot patterns really quickly. It became really clear to me very quickly that she actually loved her professional subject matter. She worked in innovation. She was really passionate about her subject matter. And interestingly enough, she also was very good at what she did and enjoyed it. She liked a lot of the skills, the tasks, the training, a lot of the stuff that was directly related, the base of her industry, the base of her profession, i.e., her profession itself did not seem to be the issue. Again, this is key, getting clarity around early on in the process, especially if you're an overthinker. If not, what you're going to do, you're just going to keep overthinking the same wrong assumptions. However, where things took a really interesting turn was when I made her go through an exercise that I call the client from hell exercise. It's often easier for my clients to think of what they really do not enjoy. So I asked her to think of the most unpleasant clients that she'd had in her current job, but also in her career so far. And what she then realized is, oh my God, the largest pain, both in her current job and in her career so far, was really the type of clients that her employer and therefore she had, and that she'd had no say in. She really realized, oh my God, so much of my pain is actually a people pain. It is down to the client that she had to work with and, had no say in, because she was an employee. It was just whatever her employer sent her way. And that was a big aha moment for her, that, wow, the who is really the problem here, not my profession. She realized that she didn't actually need a massive career change. Instead, what she needed was a change within her current career and how she was practicing that career, that profession, and who she was doing it with. And when we dig down further, because you always want to make sure you do your due diligence, we realize that the commonalities or the red threads that sort of tied all these kind of clients or the who's together is, because this is important, right? They were from sectors and industries that really Lucy had no interest in. There were also companies that were just purely money-driven. They were not open to creativity. They were not really open to pure innovation. For them, hiring an innovation consultant was more like just a tick in the box, right? And these clients were really not open to implementing what Lucy suggested, which was really frustrating. She would put all her heart and soul into finding solutions and really creative solutions and innovative ideas for them, and then they would just leave them. They wouldn't really do anything with them. And also what she noticed is that often those clients were brands or to do with subjects that Lucy had no interest in whatsoever, right? And it was a lot of this insight, amongst other things that I did with her as well, that really helped solidify very early on in the career change process that she didn't actually need a complete career change. This is important if you're listening as well to get clear on that, because what I see a lot of people do, they kind of just throw the baby out with the bathwater and replicate the same problem somewhere else. So it's really important for us is to realize, okay, what is the problem that needs solving? And for Lucy, it was the who that caused her the most pain, not her subject matter or the profession that she was in. So that was the who for her, was the career problem that most needed solving. So now we got certainty as what needs to change. We need to change the who that she worked with, her client group, so to say. Now, since she was very clear on who her client from hell was, then what I wanted to help her do is to flip it. Let's flip it. So now you know who your client from hell is. Let's turn that into the client from heaven. Now that's easier. Now you know the negative. Let's look at the positive. So she had a few ideas, but she also, when it came down to it, when I really pushed her, she had a pretty good idea what she wanted. She just wasn't used to allowing herself to think of what she most wanted. Do you remember what I said to you at the beginning? Give yourself permission to allow yourself to think about what you want. That was really hard for Lucy. She was not used to thinking about what she wanted. She was just used to taking care of whatever came her way. That might be an aha moment for you as well. So her ideal client, when given the choice, would be someone who really valued innovation, who could see the importance of innovation from a business perspective, an open-minded client who actually really could see that investing in innovation was an investment and a necessity, something that would give their company a unique selling point. It was a company that wasn't just resting on their laurels and flogging the same dead old horse. It was a company, a type of client who would keep up with the times and also wanted to use innovation to get the employees excited. Use innovation to solve problems, create opportunities, rather than it just being a box-ticking exercise. These clients, they had a startup mentality, so to say. They might be large or established firms, but they were open-minded. They were in exciting industries. They might be startups, not-for-profits, or established companies who were going through change and knew there was an urgency to innovate. All of these clients would have an urgency to innovate, to make change, and to get buy-in. That's the thing. Getting clear on her who was such a big tool towards making her realize that what she needed was a career reconfiguration versus a total change. And what I want to say to you, if you're listening, this is not a one-off. Lucy's story is not a one-off. With my clients, there is always a handful, and this happens on a regular basis, where when they work with me, we figure out, actually, you are in the right line of work or the right profession. You have the right subject. But there might just be something around the way that you are doing your profession. And it's so in this case with Lucy, it was just the wrong client group. So we need to change how you do your current career. It might be what you do or who you do it with or under what circumstances. But this is so important to get clarity around. Like I say, this is one of the first things that I help people get clarity on when they work with me, because it'll fast track them by years, because so much of what you're overthinking and overwhelming yourself with is you haven't even defined the nature of the problem that you're trying to solve. And if you don't do that, you're either going to end up replicating the same problem somewhere else, or you're just going to end up keep overthinking and overwhelming. So let's get clarity on the nature of your career problem. For some of you listening, you don't actually need that much of a career change. Though a lot of you will, but it's so important to get clear on that, right? All right. So that was Lucy. But what I also just will say about Lucy, and this is a little bit of a side note, but it's something I really want to mention because I know it might be at the back of your mind. And this is a note about self-confidence and about starting your own business. Because here's the interesting thing about Lucy. When she first started working with me, and I'm saying this because for Lucy, having as much control over who as possible meant that she needed to start her own business, because that's how you get the most control over who you most want to work with, your ideal client, right? And when she first started with me, she was like, I just want to think about other careers. I'm not the confident type. I don't think I'm the entrepreneurial type. I don't think I'm confident enough to start my own business. Now, I have a lot of podcast episode about confidence and about how it's not a requirement for starting your own business, because you just need the right skills. You don't need the confidence. So make sure if confidence is this issue for you, listen to a lot of the episodes that I've done specifically around confidence. But in the process of working with me, thankfully, it became clear to Lucy that actually if she was really honest with herself and what she wanted and how to get the most control over her career, she was actually ready and hungry to start up her own business. She just needed someone to help her give herself permission for that. And she was also at a stage in her life where she wanted more freedom and flexibility. She also wanted to be able to work from anywhere. So I helped her with all of that. But with my help, she just gave herself permission. She realized that actually she had done so much great work. She was a real achiever. And interestingly enough, she was already the person who was kind of running the show, running the business in her current job, even though she kept seeing herself just as a safe pair of hands, second in command. But I was like, it's time to step into leadership. Start your own company. With her, she already had the expertise that this company was going to be all about. So now was the time for her to actually claim the financial benefits, be her own boss. And I know there are a lot of you listening who are in jobs and in companies where you're pretty much running the show already, but you're not getting the credit, whether that's, in terms of all of the work that you do and the financial benefits and all of that. So now is the time to start your own business. You already know how to do it. You already are in charge. Turn it to your advantage. So for Lucy, that meant we could design a business of her own that she could start launching. She did not have to start from scratch. Instead, we could build on all of those great things that already worked for her in her career, as well as making sure we didn't repeat the same question, the same problem. We made sure she got the right client group. And the beauty of this is that she could tailor her services and her offerings in her own company based on what she most enjoyed doing and the problems she most enjoyed solving and the type of clients she most wanted to work with. And this is so important for those of you who want to start your own business or your own consulting firm or your own, portfolio career or a different career. Don't just turn it into a business where you work with anyone with a pulse. Make sure you attract the right the right client, so you don't just end up having the same problems in your own company. Okay, so that was Lucy, an overthinker who it might help realize that she just needed to change her client base, her who, rather than her entire career. What about you? How much of the who is an issue for you, both in terms of the degree of change that you need, but also in terms of giving you ideas for a new who, a new business, a new career? Remember, this is such a massive area. I just wanted to give you a little taste here. All right, so let's move on to the opposite. Let's meet Jonathan, the overwhelmer. Now, so Jonathan is a classic overwhelmer, multi-passionate. For him, nailing down his who with my help really massively helped him narrow down and focus so he could pick and combine his best ideas into a highly specific business. Now, whereas Lucy was an overthinker with just a few ideas, or actually she didn't feel like she had any, Jonathan is the opposite. And I have a lot of clients, both like Lucy and like Jonathan, but Jonathan was the classic, what I call popcorn brain. He would get new ideas every week. He would feel torn in a million different directions and he would get easily distracted, and then life happens and years passed. Right? I know a lot of you listening can relate to that. So background-wise, Jonathan was a lawyer in an area of law that he had absolutely no freaking interest in. Of course, though, he was a high performer. He was much appreciated by both clients and bosses. He would always go the extra mile, burn himself out, We all know the story. My clients are always really hard workers. But what I will say is, with Jonathan, there is a lot to his stories. I just want to give you the overview here, right? Because there's a lot of details to his story, but I know a lot of you overwhelmer are going to appreciate some of the details, not just the ones to do with the who, but also some of the other details. So let's go into Jonathan's story. So again, as soon as Jonathan started working with me, I wanted to do a diagnosis. Like I say, I do that very early on in the program. I do what I call a career change prescription or diagnostic. I either do it for you, depending on how you work with me, or I show you how to do it for yourself. As in, what is the problem we got on our hands here? And it was pretty clear to me early on, and also for Jonathan, who was going through my highly specific career change prescription, that he needed a big career change. He didn't just need a change within his current career, unlike Lucy. It wasn't just his client group that was a problem. He had so many factors directly related to his professions that caused him trouble, that caused him pain. And again, this is key to figure out for you. He was in the wrong profession, i.e. law, and he had absolutely no interest in the subject of law. He also hated his who, but he most of all hated his subject. And this is often the case for my legal clients, for my finance clients. They do not enjoy the subject they're working with. Versus, for example, Lucy, she did actually like her subject, innovation. But the very fact that we realize that, yes, Jonathan, you are in the wrong profession. You need to leave that behind, even though you can still use it as a moneymaker. That already gave him a lot of clarity. And that also meant that early on, once you're clear about how much of a change you need, that also meant that already straight away, Jonathan could see that a lot of the ideas for other careers, for other businesses that he cooked up, they weren't right for him. But going through my framework, going through my program, he also realized that he wanted to start his own business. Now, not all of my clients start their own business, but a lot of my clients do, or they do a portfolio career, or they do a business, because after 35, that is one of the best options and it gives you more control. But he also realized he wanted to start his own business. He wanted the kind of life where he had more freedom. He was also really fed up with just being an abused, safe pair of overworked hands for his toxic boss. Do we spot a theme here? So when I helped him also clarify his values, it became clear that one of the reasons why he did not like being a lawyer was he actually wanted to solve real problems for real people, meaningful problems. He didn't just want to make more money for his law firm or more money for his law clients. He wanted a much more meaningful problem to solve, to get his teeth into. If he was going to start a business, it was going to be something meaningful with real people where he could forge real deep relationships. However, practically, and this is the case for a lot of my clients, when he needed a big change, that was all very well, but he couldn't just jump ship from one day to the other, just leave his legal career behind to go all in on his own company from day one. He was quite risk averse, fearful. He was also single. He was fully relying on himself to make cash flow and pay his way. He was also worried about failing, risking it all. Hence why I, like I often do, suggested that we look at a portfolio career approach where he doesn't just quit his entire career or money-making skill from one day to the other and jump in. Rather, we look at how he can use his current legal skill set to have cash flow coming in via contracts or part-time assignments, whilst also start making money in his own business. Now, this is how it works for a lot of my clients who can't just, leave their, well-paid job one day and just jump in and not make any money. There are so many ways around this, but a portfolio career approach where you use your existing skill set to have some money coming in while you also build your business on the side, that's the way to go. But where he really needed a lot of help from me was narrowing down his best ideas so he could pick the best one or combine his best ones. And that was really hard for him because his brain did not stop popping ideas. And this is so easy for me because I can always, one of the things that I can see when people send me their many ideas is what I always look for or show them how to do. I look for what is the theme here or the red thread? What is the repetition? And what I could easily see with Jonathan, there might be millions of ideas here, but there is a red thread, there is a theme, there is a repetition. For him, I could see it was health, it was aging, it was longevity, it was wellness, it was all of that. And I was like, Jonathan, a lot of this, can you see it's to do with health, aging, real solutions, wellness, all of that. Can you see that's really the red thread or the theme that's going through here? And this is also a tip for those of you with a lot of ideas. Look for the red thread, the themes, the repetitions, right? And I was like, okay, clearly we're talking about the subject here being health. You need a new subject. Health is the one that kind of is repeating itself over and over. Why are we not going with that? And he was like, well, but, I really want to do something to do with health, but I don't want to spend years upfront retraining to become a nurse or a doctor, just in case it's not the right thing for me. But on the other hand, I also don't just want to become a nutritionist or a personal trainer. I don't just want to talk to, in his word, posh ladies, who just want to lose weight. I want to solve real problems. So what I said to him, okay, what we want to do, we want to come up with what I call a minimum viable product of a health business first that you can test drive, a business idea that does not require you to retrain as a nurse or a doctor up first, but rather something where we can test drive this subject that is health, but using something you're already, using a skill set that you already enjoy using. But let's test the subject of health. Now that we're clear that it's a subject that you like. This is important for some of you who might be interested in subjects where you're like, oh, but I don't want to go and train for years up front before I find out if I like it. Don't worry. You likely don't need to. We can look at what kind of smaller businesses you can test drive, portfolio career approaches you can do that allow you to test drive things on the side for you to get a feel for the subject, for the industry, for the client group, to get real life feedback. And maybe you don't even need to retrain. For a lot of my clients, they haven't needed to retrain. So now we are clearer on the subject. Let's look at certainty. This is one of the important things with my clients who are overwhelmed. Let's look at what you're certain about, because obviously you don't want to start from scratch when you're over 35. You already have things that you can build on. So let's look at what you actually do want to build on. You might hate being a lawyer, but let's look at what you are bloody good at and what you enjoy. Right? Because here's the thing, even if you hate being a lawyer, There are always things that you've done in your career that you've gotten real achievements and results with that is a skill set that doesn't belong to your profession, that belongs to you. It is stuff that you cannot help not doing. You always do it, no matter where you are at. So let's look at what are those things? What is that skill set? And when we dig deeper, what he was really bloody good at was written and verbal communications. He had the gift of the gab, whether it was verbally or written. He was really good at advocacy. He was good at educating, training, explaining, getting buy-in, mediating, doing deals. He just hated law. But, so do you see, he already had a skill set. I'm like, all right, now we got some initial clarity on what could be a great initial business ideas to test for Jonathan. We got a skill set, we got a subject, but let's bring in the who tool to really break the cycle of overwhelm and to pull his best ideas out of him and to shift the focus for clarity. So I was going to ask him a number of questions, and I think you're going to find these questions helpful too. So take note. So I was like, all right, Jonathan, who is your who? Who is your ideal client for this type of business that you want to start with? Guess what? Jonathan hadn't even thought about the who. He just had all of these disconnected ideas that were not connected to anybody. They were just sort of like floating in space. That's all breakthrough opportunity right there. Again, so many of you are not thinking about your who. And especially if you're an overwhelmer, that's key because it can really ground you and help you focus and clarify. So there's obviously a lot more to it. But here are some other questions I asked him. Who's got problems to do with your passions or your subjects? So in this case, health. Who's got health problems that you would love to solve and where you might be able to use the skill set that you're good at and, enjoy using? Who needs you the most? And here's a question that's helpful for a lot of you listeners. Your passion or your subject is their problem. Right? So think about this like a business owner, not like some fluffy hobbyist. This is not about me, and my isolated passion. This is about who can I help? This business is for someone who's going to pay you, right? So think like a business owner. Their problem equals your passion or your subject, or your passion, your subject equals their problem, right? Who has an urgent enough health problem that they're willing to pay to have it solved? Not a nice to have problem, but something that's painful enough that they're willing to pay for it. Who are you uniquely placed to help? Who do you care most about helping, advocating for? Right? Who do you most want to help? Who do you care most about in terms of your values, in terms of your interest? Right? But I really want you to think about that one. Your subject equals their problem. So this is what Jonathan realized, or part of what he realized. There's obviously a lot more to it. He was like, you know what, Rikke, I really want to work. My ideal client is a person over 50 with a chronic illness. Again, he didn't just want to fix quick cosmetic issues, right? He wanted people who had a chronic illness that were over 50. It was an ongoing chronic illness, something that impacted on a day-to-day that needed ongoing solving, ongoing managing. He wanted, and also what he realized is if he really allowed himself to think about who he most want to work with, who's his ideal client, he wanted people who in their life and their career might have been successful. They were gifted people, but who, when it came to their own health, they didn't really know how to stand up for themselves or navigate the healthcare system, and hence they didn't get the treatments or the attention and solution that they deserved and they needed. And also maybe sometimes they could also be older people where their kids are just too busy and they don't know how to help. So his clients could both be the parents or the children of these parents who are ill and who therefore want to invest in this service. So potentially you would have two types of clients. So either the ill person themselves or their children who didn't have the time or the energy or the capacity to do this. But this is really who he felt strongly attracted to. Do you see how powerful the who question can be? Now, just as a side note, Jonathan was based in the UK, where we are blessed to have free healthcare. But the flip side is that the system can be a maze to navigate if you don't know how to navigate it. And unless you kind of rock the boat proactively or you're slightly pushy and you really follow up, you often don't get the treatment or the attention that you need or want. And you can really kind of get lost in the system. It's a healthcare system that's gone through a lot of change and hasn't had a lot of resources for years. So it's important to know when to invest in going private and when not. So what we could really see, there's an obvious gap in the market for healthcare, client advocacy for guidance, and the subject being healthcare after 50, where Jonathan could really use his skill set to write and speak on behalf of people and follow up. And these people help them rock the boat to get the attention, to get what they needed. And then what I thought, okay, this is a good question as well. Are there any client groups where you already have an unfair advantage or unique relatability or already have experience of, right? Unfair advantage, unique ability, existing experience. And it turns out, like it often does, came down to Jonathan's personal history. This might be the case as you. So turns out, and I see this so often with clients once we start digging down, turns out that Jonathan's mum, she had been a successful professional, but then she got older and she started having chronic health issues, and she found it really hard to put herself first and fight for what she really wanted with regards to health. She'd had a number of health issues over the years. And what Jonathan had done is he'd used his advocacy, his communication skills, his strong persuasion, interpersonal skills, all this stuff that we discussed and identified, and his interest in health to get her the best treatments, but to also help her assess when it was worth paying to go private and where to go. He'd written loads of letters, he'd done health advocacy, talked on her behalf, guided her through the maze. And that was also really how he realized that, oh yeah, that is the kind of health I'm interested in, using health and my skills to solve real problems for this type of person. There you go. We've got your minimum viable product. We got the idea for this business that you can test without having to go back and retrain as a nurse or a doctor first. And the great thing about this initial minimum viable product business was that he did not have to do that as a full-time thing. He could do that on the side, whilst he still had money coming in from his legal career, So what he originally was going to find out now, he could start, testing this out with friends, with colleagues, and then real paying clients. And, whether it's them, the elderly people, or with their kids who wanted to pay for this. And then he could expand from there. So that would be a great way of test driving before he gets more specific or get more qualifications. This is so important, finding a way of test driving what you want so you can get real life feedback of what it feels like to engage with the subject, with the client group, and then you can make bigger decisions. You see? That's why it's so important to test drive ideas in the real world. And also, this is where Jonathan actually got emotional. He's like, he could really see the bigger vision. Once he started getting all of these learnings with all these clients, he also wanted to share all of these learnings with people who might not be able to afford him, and take on his business. There's obviously a lot more to the story, but do you see how much of a breakthrough was possible due to nailing down his ideal client? Now, there's a lot to Jonathan's story, like I say, but not only was he able to test drive this business, but he also got a real quick win when it came to actually leaving the job he hated so much behind, because that was one of the issues why he got in touch with him in the first place. He really, really hated the job he was stuck in, but he couldn't see a way forward. So now that he got clarity and he knew that he over time wanted to leave law behind, it wasn't right for him, that also gave him the confidence to both leave the job he hated behind, but also stressful London. And he actually got a part-time law job by the seaside that had really great work-life balance and actually and then he also took some fractional roles with his legal skills. But that all freed up time and energy for him to start test driving this business on the side without risking it all, because he still had money coming in. So that was Jonathan, an overwhelmed, multi-passional individual who used his who, getting clear on his who, to finally combine his ideas, pick the best ones, and create a unique business offering. What about you? Could nailing down your who also help nail down the best idea for you, or combining them like in this case? Again, remember, if you're an overwhelmer and also if you're an overthinker, it is so important to remember that changing careers or starting a business, it is not just about you. It is vital that you also think about others, those people who are actually going to pay you, your ideal client. Your passion, equals their problem, right? Who's got a problem related to your passion, to your subject? It's so important, if you're an overwhelmer, that you get out of navel-gazing territory and also think about others. Remember, it's your client, they'll pay you. What do they need and want that you can align with the subject that you now want to work in, the passion that you now want to work with? So getting clear on your who is really key. Now, let's wrap up. I have a feeling that you are listening to the Career Change podcast because you also want to create a much more meaningful career, a much more meaningful work life. And as humans, we want to feel useful too and valuable and appreciated by others. And one way to make sure that you get that baked in to your new job, your new career, your new business is to get clear on who you most want to work with, who your ideal client is, whether that's an internal or external client. Meaning is a two-way street, not a one-way street. So remember to include your who, others, in the career change process, right? Get out of the navel-gazing rabbit hole you might be in and focus on who you most want to help or guide or coach or entertain or advise. That's how you also build in meaning. So make sure you focus on your who, and that's also the great way to get excited, get clarity, and get focus in your career change process. Now, if you've resonated with what I'm talking about here, but also in general, when you listen to the Career Change podcast, if you feel like I'm talking to you like I'm inside of your head, you might be the overwhelmer, you might be the overthinker, maybe your combo, and you feel like I'm talking directly to you. You are my who. You are my ideal client, and I can help you. You're my who. You're likely a mid-career professional over 35. And here's what I want you to know. I get you. There's a reason why I'm inside of your head. I've got almost 2 decades experience of helping people just like you. I can help you figure out what you want to do and who you want to do it with. So if you are done with DIYing your career change, you're done with going around circles, and you want to massively speed up and get clarity and professional advice, then come over to thecareerchangepodcast.com and click on the Work With Me button, and I can help you choose or design a meaningful new career or business you can start transitioning into. So no more faffing about, no more wasting time. If you are my who, then come over to thecareerchangepodcast.com and let's work together. Thank you so much for listening.